You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Hey, welcome back. It's another day. It's another episode of Engage. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Norman Lau. And what do we have for our very wonderful Tuesday comment or email or message?
Well, I mean, you said it, that all of our emails are fabulous, and here's yet another fabulous one. This is from Athena. And Norman, tell us what Athena has to say.
So Athena starts with, "Hi, John and Norm." Hi, Athena.
Hi, back to you.
"I'm getting caught back up in just listen to faces. I think you missed something that was always a full-on surface narrative for me. I'm biracial. B'Elanna struggling with her two halves, right as the number of multiracial people in the US really started to go up, was, for me at least, highly topical and on point. And that in her sides were depicted as timid and savage always felt like racial commentary to me. Granted that read is fueled by the background I bring into the room, but it feels like a misstep to discuss the episode without at least a nod to racial and ethnic identity. You guys are great. Love you tons, Athena." Love you tons back.
Yes, we love you tons, Athena. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And you are 100% right. I think that is a valid and important and deeply thoughtful perspective to bring to that show, to bring to that episode. You know, we can only discuss it as far as the morals, meanings, messages that we get out of it. It was great to put the preview of this episode up in Patreon and almost immediately hear from somebody who had a similar comment as yours, Athena. Mm-hmm. So I love the fact that you can get an episode out there, and just like we were talking about in yesterday's Engage, one person has one take on it, another person has another take on it. Neither one of those is wrong. But they can point to the perspectives that the viewer is bringing. Now, the question is, did one of the writers or somebody in the room at the time say, hey, we're making an episode with this as the metaphor? Maybe, maybe not. But I think what's great is that, well, Star Trek has had this long lineage of telling stories about people who are struggling with their identity. Spock, of course, we talk about somebody being, well, by species.
That sounds good. Yeah.
He has his own struggles, certainly. And then you take all the later fill-in characters who have kind of filled the Spock role, whether it's Data or Seven of Nine or the EMH or anybody who is trying to figure out who they are. And very often parts of the psyche are at conflict with each other. I think that's something that Star Trek does incredibly well. And if you're getting that message out of it, wonderful. I got nothing to add to it except that I want to hear more.
You know, it's a really interesting observation, Athena. And I think that even though that my personal perspective isn't exactly the same as yours, I do understand that as a person of color myself, kind of like walking the line between two different cultures. In one respect, as a Filipino, when I go into Filipino culture events or Filipino culture, gatherings, with family and friends and people of the country, of the old country, it's really difficult to try and behave in a way where it's acceptable for both sides. For Filipinos that have been educated and brought up in the United States and raised a certain way versus Filipinos that have just come, from the homeland and are trying to ingratiate themselves into the United States, where they're still a little bit more conservative with their values and a little bit more seclusionary, in the way that they commune with each other. And that's hard because you want to be and celebrate both cultures at the same time, because that's who you are. That's the DNA of what makes you. And I like that they focused in this episode on separating that from B'Elanna, because you really saw that the timid side of her was the human side of her. And why did they focus on that specifically, where the human side of her is the side of her that is more attuned to what Starfleet holds dear, that boldness, that exploration, that sense of exploration, that sense of going out there and seeking out, strange new worlds and new civilizations. But it's really the Klingon side of her that got her out of that dilemma, but I know that we focused a little bit more heavily on kind of like the enemy within, kind of like the direct correlation of the original series episode where Kirk had to get both sides of him fused back together in order to make decisions, in order to be that person.
Yeah.
And I like John, I agree with you. Just because that you and I can't really fully see every single side of the equation doesn't necessarily mean that we are seeing every single side of the equation, because we can't. Again, 2 people, 4 eyes, that's all we do. Right. That's all the resource we have looking at these episodes. So that's why, Athena, your point, your comment, this email that you sent in is so important to what we do, because without that, we don't get to see or even question or address a possibility to bring into this discussion, which I think is incredibly important. And thank you for doing that for us.
Yes. So more, keep them coming, especially you, Athena. So if you've enjoyed what we discussed today, please like, share, and subscribe to the Mission Log Engage playlist here on YouTube at youtube.com/roddenberryprod. Join us over at patreon.com/missionlog. Please, again, that's patreon.com/missionlog, because you get early access to shows. Most importantly, you get access to our Discord. And look, I'm not saying that those messages get priority, but there's a lot of conversation going on over at Discord. So join us there. Send us your comments at missionlog@roddenberry.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at missionlogpod. And remember, we may engage like we did with Athena's comments on the air.